Today, we're going to look at page 151 in our reveal book. And if you need some review on function values and evaluating function notation. Taking a look at our first problem, f of x. Yesterday, we said that that is just that symbol for y. We have a function of x. X is our input. And so when we look at the first input, we have a function of 4, and then we're going to add 3. So the negative 2x plus 9 is the expression that is equivalent to our f of x. So the 4 is the domain. We're going to input that for the x. Going to go in for x. So we take out the x, we put parentheses where we're substituting, and we have that 4. So negative 2 times 4 plus 9 is that expression. We have that additional plus 3 that gets added on. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Negative 8 plus 9. So we're doing this entire function of f of 4, getting that answer, and then adding the 3. So we do have to use order of operations. In our second problem, we have a function of 5 minus a function of 1. So 5 is our input for the x in the first one. So in these brackets here, we're using that expression, negative 2x plus 9. And we're going to input that 5 for the x. In the second bracket, we have our second input, the f of 1. Now that subtraction sign needs to be on the outside of the bracket or the grouping symbol. And so I'm going to subtract the expression negative 2x plus 9 when our x is 1, when our input is 1. So 1 is going in for that x. And then I'm going to do that math. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10 plus 9. So that bracket is just becoming a parenthesis. And then negative 2 times 1 would be negative 2 plus 9. So before we use that subtraction, we have to get the value of that negative 2x plus 9 when x is 1. Negative 10 plus 9 is negative 1. Negative 2 plus 9 is 7. Negative 1 minus 7 is negative 8. I owe $1. I take 7 away. We now have the 3 checks below. We're going to use negative 3x plus 2 for our replacement for our function. The x is the input, and that goes in to that expression. So for the first one, f of negative 4 equals negative 3x plus 2. I'm going to take negative 4 and replace that with x. I'm using parentheses. 2 negatives multiplied to make a positive, and we get 14. In letter B, we are going to add 8 after we do a function of 5. So a function of 5 is equal to negative 3x plus 2. There's that expression for the function of 5, and then we're going to add 8 to that. I'm going to take that 5 and plug it in for x, and go ahead and write out your expression and what you have. So I'm doing all of this first before I add that 8. Negative 15 plus 2 plus 8, negative 13 plus 8, and that gives us negative 5. In our third check, we're taking a function of 3 minus a function of 6. So for my first one, again, we're using that negative 3x plus 2. So I'm going to have negative 3x plus 2 minus another negative 3x plus 2. But in the first input, our x is 3. And in our second input, our x is 6. I'm now going to plug in negative 3 times 3 plus 2. So I'm going to get that entire answer. Then we're going to subtract our second function of 6. So I'm going to have negative 3 times 6 plus 2. And then we can do that math. Negative 9 plus 2 minus negative 18 plus 2, negative 7 minus negative 16. And so we now have a double negative. If I subtract negative 16, that double negative becomes a plus. Negative 7 plus 16. I owe 7. I have 16. So I would have $9 left after paying someone back. Okay, so that's example 4. Moving on to the bottom of the page, example 5, evaluating functions. H of x is equal to negative 6x squared plus 18x plus 36. Find each value. So our expression for this function of h is negative 6x squared plus 18x plus 36. We need to be careful. We haven't talked much about powers, but the base of this exponent is just the x. That negative 6 is not part of the base. So when we plug in, you're going to see that parentheses are going around the x. And so on this problem, we have our x, our input is 2. So that's going to go in for our x now in 2 places. Order of operations, you do not multiply first. You do your power first. So 2 squared would be 4. And then negative 6 times 4 would be negative 24. 18 times 2 would be 36. So your book doesn't show the 2 steps here to simplify negative 6 times 2 squared. So we do the 2 squared and then multiply it by negative 6. Negative 24 plus 36 plus 36. So here we would subtract, and 12 added to 24 would be 36. So this would be 12 plus 36. So I get an answer of 48. In letter B, this is just like the problems we did previously. We now have 2 function inputs. X is 4 and x is 1. And so what we're doing is we're using that expression, negative 6x squared plus 18x plus 36. And we're using that now twice because we are evaluating that function twice by subtracting the domain of 1 from a domain of 4. And so here on this first one, our x is 4. And on our second one, our x is 1. And so all we're doing is rewriting that negative 6x squared plus 18x plus 36 and taking out the x. Notice that we have parentheses around the x when we input. So anytime we input, use those parentheses. And then over here, we're going to get -6 times 4 squared. 4 squared is 16. So 16 times -6 would be -96. 18 times 4. 10 times 4 is 40. 8 times 4 is 32. So that would be 72. Over on this one, 1 squared is 1. 1 times -6 is -6. 18 times 1 is 18. Math is a little bit easier on that one. And then over here, I'm going to subtract. So 82, 92, that's 20 plus another 4 to get to 96. So this would be -24 plus 36. -24 plus 36, that would be 12, minus, before we subtract, we have to get this to an answer. So -6 plus 18 would be 12. 12 plus 36 would be 48. 12 minus 48 would be -36. It's a little bit more challenging. The IXL is going to be definitely easier than some of these. And then for letter C, we have a function of 5. So 5 is going to be our input. And then after we do that, we're going to subtract 7. So that 5 is going to go in for our x, and we're still using that same algebraic expression that I have highlighted in yellow up top, -6x squared plus 18x plus 36. The x is going to become 5. And then notice that that -7 is not in the grouping symbol. You're evaluating the function first, getting an answer for that, and then you subtract that 7 at the ends. Again, order of operations, we do powers first. So 5 squared is 25. And then we're taking 25 times the -6. So if I had 6 quarters, that would be $1.50. So this would be -150. 18 times 5, 10 times 5 is 50. 8 times 5 is 40. 50 plus 40 is 90, plus 36. So this is all going to be simplified now because that is that function of 5. -150 plus 90, that would be -60 plus 36. Different signs subtract. If I count up 4 to 40 and then 20 to 60, so -24 minus 7, same signs. I'm going to actually add. If I'm at -24 and I go back 7, I would be at -31. Please let me know if you have any questions, and you will be working on the IXL today.